people might see my career progression and think it makes sense, but at various times in my career, I felt some insecurity behind having been in so many industries. But the truth is that I always had that North Star, which was to help underrepresented communities have access, be that to education, be that to equity in the workplace. And so in that, I think it was the common thread through teaching in the Bronx for 2 years through Teach for America, working on political campaigns in Los Angeles, and ultimately joining the second largest district in the country, LAUSD, to work on public policy. From there, and then in business school, just falling in love with my organizational behavior course and deciding that I wanted to try HR as a career.
Welcome to Latinx in Power, a podcast hosted by Thaisa Fernandes.
Welcome to Latinx in Power. Today, we are talking with Pamela Burga. Pamela is a Senior D&I, Diversity and Inclusion partner at Tesla and leads the D&I talent development strategy. Fun fact, Pamela is also a classical trained lyrical soprano. That's so awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Thaisa. I'm really excited to be here today with you and honored to speak with you and your audience. I'll just add to your wonderful intro that my mom is from Chihuahua, Mexico, and my dad is from Iquitos in Lima, Peru. I'm born and bred from the LA area. And again, such a pleasure to be here with you today.
That's awesome. So in this episode, we'll talk more about transitioning careers and industries, since Pamela has driven individual and organizational performance in a variety of industries. We also talk more about her work as diversity and inclusion leader. So first things first, how did everything start?
Thank you for the question. I will share a little bit about my early life here and then catch you up further in the chat as to where things are at today. I grew up in a suburb of Los Angeles called Pomona, California. And in that experience, I share this because it was very formative and it drove a lot of the decisions from anywhere from my major to my current career in the inequity that I saw between school systems. So I grew up in a neighborhood that was under-resourced and in a low-income neighborhood. And I went to high school in a neighborhood that was 10 minutes away. And it was quite affluent. Over 80% of the students went to college. And I was very confused at a young age as to why my peers in Pomona had different access to, or limited access to some resources compared to my peers in my new school. And so it was in college that I took a psychology class. Actually, the class was called Psychology of the Chicano. And in that class, I learned that my experience wasn't isolated to just me. It was symptomatic of something that was prevalent throughout the US, the concept of educational inequity. So that's what really changed a lot of my thinking and shaped my life thereafter. I switched my majors for music. Yes, I am a lyrical soprano and I continue to sing. I minored in it, but I changed my majors to public policy analysis and then wrote my thesis on charter schools in California and how they serviced students of color. And then thereafter, I pursued education for the first half of my career and then got my master's in education. After my MBA, however, I found a way to bridge that passion for social impact with fighting from within the belly of the beast, so to speak, in corporate America and different industries to making sure that there's a level playing field for employees too.
That's really inspiring, your story, like from music to education, social impact. How was your process navigating different industries like tech, government, entertainment, education, aerospace, automotive, and healthcare? Whoa.
I think whomever said that success is linear, that doesn't resonate with me. And it doesn't resonate with a lot of other people whom I know. For me, it was quite nonlinear. I think in hindsight, people might see my career progression and think it makes sense. But at various times in my career, I felt some insecurity behind having been in so many industries. But the truth is that I always had that North Star, which was to help underrepresented communities have access, be that to education, be that to equity in the workplace. workplace. And so in that, I think it was the common thread through teaching in the Bronx for 2 years through Teach for America, working on political campaigns in Los Angeles, and ultimately joining the second largest district in the country, LAUSD, to work on public policy. From there, and then in business school, just fallen in love with my organizational behavior course and deciding that I wanted to try HR as a career for a stretch of time. And it's afforded me a lot of experiences that I think can enable one to be the gatekeeper, can enable one to drive talent and equity throughout an organization. So in that, I would say it's important to know your function, be the subject matter expert, but it also for me has highlighted the importance of building relationships, because it's through relationships that you can navigate in different spaces. And I mean, learning a new business, that's, I think, the least hard part. So yes, I've been through aerospace, entertainment, automotive, but there's some fundamentals in your job, and then the rest you learn on the job. And it's by making those relationships that you can be successful.
Oh, that's amazing. I think you brought two really interesting points. I think the first one thing that we have been talking in this podcast a lot, that our paths maybe are not supposed to be linear, and that's okay. That's actually really interesting and awesome. So I think sometimes we have this idea that we need to define our path and just go from there. We are not supposed to change our minds, which is, in my opinion, quite boring. And also, another thing that you mentioned that I thought was really interesting was this idea of having a North Star. And although you're working in different industries, different professionals, you're following your North Star, maybe your passion, something that you're really excited to be working with. Although it might be different from profession to profession, like industry to industry, you're still working based on your North Star. That's really awesome. And what does it mean to be a Latina for you?
I love this question. I think I was reflecting on it, and I think it's important to say that we come in all shapes, sizes, colors, but I think that there's a common bond that includes a profound love for family, celebrating your culture, a pride of where you came from and your ancestors who paved the way for you to be here in this very moment. I reflect a lot on a group of co-authors. So during the pandemic, I was a co-author to a book that's first of its kind called Latinas Rising Up in HR, alongside 19 other women who were all from different countries, different parts of HR as well. But it was an interesting point in time, right? We came together, we had the book launch in October of last year. We hadn't met one another. Most of us had never met in person. And it was only like last month, actually, that we launched a Spanish version of our book that many of us were able to meet in person.
Oh, did you know that?
Yeah, in Miami.
Version. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's available now on our site, and latinasrisingupinhr.com. I mentioned that despite not having met in person, we formed these incredible relationships over this virtual world of the pandemic. And it speaks to, I think this immediate feeling of sisterhood. We really supported one another. And when finally spending time in person, there's this familiarity. It felt like, I describe it like, it felt like spending time with my primas, my cousins. So, I think that supports some of my earlier comments that there's just this bond sometimes that you connect with people that it transcends across country lines.
Awesome. I absolutely loved your book, Latinas Rising Up in HR. I personally love to hear all the stories. I think they are really inspiring. And as you said, we are all different. We have different aspirations, upbringing. We have a lot of similarities as well. And I love to hear the stories. And I'm curious to know more about the process being a co-author of a book. How was it for you?
Yeah, it was an interesting time, and I'll tell you the story. So I had moved back in with my elderly parents. They're in their 90s and in their 80s to Pomona. So I went in, there was a lot of uncertainty at the time. And then immediately the same day I moved back, I came to find that my brother had cancer, pancreatic cancer, and my world changed. I had just started my new job. I was 2 weeks in at Tesla, and the intensity behind so much of that time is even hard to reflect on. But I had seen that Latinas Rising Up in HR had a Facebook group, and I had joined because I thought, how great that there's a space like this. And there was an opportunity to be an author. I think a couple of folks might have fallen off and they were interviewing for some new authors. So I raised my hand. As in life, I just lead with my curiosity a lot. And so I raised my hand, not thinking much of it, interviewed, and I was accepted. So that became a major decision point for me. I had a lot that I was juggling, but at the same time, I just felt like I had a lot to say. I just felt inside me that I wanted to put some words and feelings to paper. It was a cathartic process for me. I spent part of it, I wrote in the emergency room, in the lobby of the emergency room, waiting with my brother. And it was a compressed time for me. I joined later in the process than others. I had like a week to write it. It was my very first experience. And I think of it like clay. It was a big mound of clay at first, and then it started to take some shape. And this is where I give a lot of thanks and credit to my friends, whom I emailed a couple of them my chapter and asked them for their feedback. And then each time I got feedback, the clay took better shape to the point where it finally felt like it was representative of what I needed to express of my story.
Amazing. I love this analogy about clay. I do ceramics, and I think when I started making it, it was kind of disappointing because it takes time. You need to have a lot of patience. And I think same thing to a lot of things we do in life. Sometimes we have this expectation that when we start working on it, it will look perfect. But a lot of time it takes visions, it takes feedback from friends and colleagues. So, and then the shape starts to appear and look nicer. And I personally really like the book. I think like every Latinx should read it because it's really inspiring to hear the stories. I saw myself in a lot of them. It was really nice to have contact with. And we definitely need more Latinx authors for sure. Yeah.
It's greatly needed for sure. And I'm really happy that with the Spanish version of the book, hopefully we can reach wider audiences as well across the globe. It was also named Amazon bestseller in 6 categories. So to your point, I think it's helpful for those who are in the field of HR, but even outside of the field of HR, there's points of connection in every one of the author stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Whoa, 6. That's amazing. And I think some people might have some questions. They might sharing with us what are the responsibilities and goals of a diversity practitioner.
Absolutely. And I think that this role's an interesting one. Being in diversity and inclusion, some companies have had it for several decades and some only had it in the last decade and others have just started it in the last year and a half, right? But ultimately, there's some similar fundamentals across some D&I teams. So there's a saying that diversity is the equivalent of getting an invitation to a party, and inclusion is feeling so welcome that you can dance on the dance floor like nobody's watching. I always like to think of it that way because in a team, in an organization, you want to look to see who's gotten that invitation, right? So this work involves looking at the representation of an organization at all levels and analyzing movements in hires, promotions, attrition, in addition to employee engagement information. So there's a lot of quantitative and qualitative work that goes towards this, but it's important to analyze and in order to be able to address any issues that may be interfering with making sure that teams are representative of the communities and customers that they are serving. It's important that employees feel like they can bring their whole selves to work. That's something that a lot of companies really strive for. And there's different strategies to support this, but it all first starts with taking inventory of what the needs are to develop a customized approach.
I love this analogy about the invitation to the party because it's great that you are invited to the party, but if you don't have the resources to go to the party, what's going to happen, right? You might not go, or you might go and feel awkward or don't enjoy. So I really like this conversation. That's really interesting.
Absolutely. I think, there's the elevated sense, the aspirational goal being the sense of belonging at an organization. So then you, like in that analogy, we think about who's picking out the music, who's at the table there, right? Who's customizing that? So who's making decisions at an organization too? And I think that's an important part of the discussion as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And how can I see individual contributor help to foster a diverse and ethical work environment?
It is a hard question, but I'll give you 5 pieces of advice.
That's awesome.
So at many companies, not all, but many companies have what are called employee resource groups. Sometimes they're referred to as business resource groups. So if you're at a company where this exists, I encourage you to research how to get involved. It's a group of people and allies who have common interests towards a mission, right? So in tech, sometimes we see in ERGs that are called Women in Tech, or an equivalent name that might be customized for that company. So there's programming that you can see related to career development, to helping with recruiting efforts, to building community partnerships, and also just to build a network internally with one another. So those are great places to channel your energy, get to know new people, and make an impact internally. If you don't have employee resource groups at your company, I would say it's an opportunity area to connect with your HR team and ask if that's something that may be a possibility in the future. That's one piece of advice. I think another in connection to building that relationship with HR. Sometimes I think HR gets a bad rep where like HR and TV is represented as being stoic, but it's important to have, I think, those relationships and conversations with your HR team so you can share with them what opportunity areas you're seeing or what things are going well. In addition to also your recruiting teams to say, hey, I went to this college and there's a Latinx club on site that would be great for you to connect with. Or if you have a mid-career association, there's the Society of Hispanic Professionals in Engineering, SHIP, it's called. There's a big conference that they have annually. So it could be that your HR team or your recruiting team is looking for organizations to connect with, and that may be a great opportunity for you to share that feedback with them. So the third piece of advice would be if you have the availability and they have the opportunity to extend invitations to you to go to those conferences, you can go to those recruiting events and share your story with other candidates so that they can see that there are people with similar life experiences that are working at a company, and you can invite them to come and join your teams. Employee referrals is another point I would mention. We want to make sure that we're casting a wide net. When you see those opportunities pop up, those job descriptions, post them on your LinkedIn, post them in your networks, post them in that club, maybe find a way to forward it to that Latinx club at your university, because the more eyes that we can get on those internal opportunities, the better odds are that the talent pipeline will be more diversified. And then just lastly, find ways in which you can influence upward. So it may be that on your team, you're seeing opportunities to drive inclusion, right? And maybe it's celebrating a certain heritage month on your team, whatever that may be for your group. Make that heard with your manager and your peers so that there's a progression of inclusion at your organization.
Mm-hmm. I love your tips. The reason why I wanted to ask you this question, I feel that sometimes we focus a lot about what managers can do. And maybe we kind of assume that it's like the manager's responsibility and ICs cannot contribute. And I feel that it's everyone's responsibility. Mm-hmm. Think about inclusion and diversity and belonging. And you as an IC, you can do a lot. You can influence a lot. You can take action in a lot of things. And maybe you just need to start. Like maybe you can start small and scaling or finding other Latinx sort of folks to join you with that and find allies. I think we just need to start. I hear a lot of people saying, oh, my company, they don't have Latinx ERG. And I always say, create one. Find other Latinxes and create one. You can start small and grow, but you can take action as well, right?
I think that's a really great point, where you can find allies and your peers, but also in the decision makers too, right? So if you have an executive sponsor, maybe the person's at manager, director, VP level that sees your vision, supports you, and you get HR involved, that's going to help you be successful in that venture.
Yeah. And you as an IC, you can develop a lot of really important skills doing that as well. So it's an amazing 100%. Opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I've worked with various employee research groups throughout my career. And I think that's one of the big draws is that you may not be leading a team, for example, in your day-to-day job, but you're all of a sudden leading a group of volunteers. You have to influence without authority. And that in some ways is a skill that is more important, and not more important, but it'll prove you beneficial for the rest of your life in and outside of your job.
Yeah, and you definitely expand your networking circle. You might be working with folks that you probably won't be working on a day-to-day. So you're just like expanding your work. People will get to know more about you, and this can also create other opportunities in case you want to pursue them. And yeah, I think this sharing those resources and these experiences is really, really important and really.
I think those comments are really important. It's true. Like, you build visibility for yourself. You're networking outside of just your siloed team. Who knows what that might lead to in the future.
Mm-hmm. And adding to that, I have been thinking about that a lot. I feel that since a lot of folks are remote right now, which is great as well, but at the same time, we don't have the coffee chats anymore or the lunch together that you kind of like expand your circle. And this might be an opportunity for you to expand and be more visible in your organization as well, especially if you are new. I think I'm not sure how folks are doing it right now. I imagine that it might be challenging as well.
Yeah, I remember at the onset of the pandemic, we leaned in. I was at a different company, but we leaned in hard on our ERGs to try to help support those points of connection and engagement with employees and across cities, across zip codes. And it turned out to be a strength in a time of hardship at the onset of something that was quite hard.
And Pamela, what's your superpower? Tell us.
I'm going to say empathy. I think that it's the ability to empathize with vastly different people that empowers me to communicate and influence and widely. It enables me to build relationships and connect with varying employees, customers, leaders. And part of that comes from my diverse set of life experiences and having to adapt to vastly different spaces and languages. From my home to so many moments in my life. I grew up first generation American, first generation college student. And, there's this constant, I was what's the saying, like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole all the time, whether that was at home or in future academic settings. But I grew up in a predominantly Latinx neighborhood and was often the only Latina in my AP classes at USC's MBA program. So it was these sets of experiences that put me out of my comfort zone often. And I had to adapt to whatever my surrounding was, whatever the community was. And it built this empathy and ability to really authentically connect with a wide range of audiences. And I got to say, not everybody can do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And in this episode, actually in this year, we have been enjoying asking our guests about the resources that help them in their journey. I personally feel that it's really inspiring. I always reading the books, the podcasts, everything they share, and I'm learning a lot. So I'm curious, what are the resources you recommend us checking?
I actually have a quote for you, if that's okay. So college students and people who are early in their career will reach out to me often and ask for a coffee chat or an informational chat. And I sometimes can hear in their story underlying hint of imposter syndrome. And I think being, almost 20 years out of college, it's a refresher each time. I think oh, right, stepping into their shoes so early into venturing out in their career, it makes me reflect on something that really helped me. So a mentor once told me imposter syndrome is a widespread phenomenon that many people experience, but that nobody talks about. So I share with these mentees a quote by Marianne Williamson. It was a quote that I put at my desk out of business school and when I was early in my HR career. And I think I see it every once in a while and it reignites inspiration for me. It goes, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others."
Well, That's incredible. I'm going to add this description to your episode. So folks who are listening to us, you can copy and paste and print and write down whatever you want to do, put in your desk and look at it every time you need. This is a must. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think those last couple lines really hit home for me. When you get out of your own head and you let your own light shine without even knowing it, you're making other people feel safe to do the same. There's a selflessness about it that I really like, that I extract from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. Oh my God. That's amazing. We are ending your episode with this beautiful quote. I want to thank you for your time and everything you share with us. I'm going to leave this last minutes for you to share anything you want to share, where people can find you, where people can buy your book.
Great. Thank you. Well, you can find me. I have an Instagram I created during the pandemic. It's Pamela.Burga. So pretty easy to find. And feel free to add me, message me if you have any ideas about content that you'd like to see more of. I'm always open to that too. And I'm just very grateful to be here with you and to be able to connect with your audiences. It's a privilege to be here. And thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. And where people can buy the book.
LatinasRisingUpInHR.com. Net proceeds go to scholarships. So for students who are, or recent college grads who are going into the fields of HR. So it's great. It's available on the website in addition to Amazon and online at Walmart, Target, I think Barnes & Noble now as well.
That's awesome. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, go get your book. Thank you so much, Pamela.
Thank you very much.
That's it for today. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. We'll have more interviews with amazing Latinx every first Tuesday of the month. Check our website, latinxempower.com, to hear more. Don't forget to share comments and feedback, always with kindness. See you soon.